If you analyzed the Tuesday results out of Wisconsin, it was a bit of a mixed bag, right? Yes, the liberal Supreme Court justice won, and that's going to have some repercussions with redistricting and maybe even some measures that Donald Trump tries to do through executive orders that some courts are going to probably stop. That's bad. You know what's good? Voter ID law, not just passed overwhelmingly by the people of Wisconsin, but it wasn't just a law, it was an amendment to the Constitution. So that state Supreme Court, they can't overturn it. Even the legislature, if it goes Democrat, can't overturn it. They'd have to reintroduce it to the people of Wisconsin to re-amend the Constitution. And if you look at the map, you know how we do the blue-red breakdown of counties in the United States, and it's overwhelmingly red, and you just see little blue concentrations like on the coast and in New York, D.C., Chicago, that kind of thing. Yeah, you do the breakdown in Wisconsin on who voted for the constitutional amendment for voter ID, and it's like overwhelmingly red. And there's this little blue square in Madison, Wisconsin, the Democrat enclave, where the capital city is. This is an incredibly popular measure. The exact same state, on the exact same day where they voted a liberal justice onto the Supreme Court, they at the same time voted for voter ID. It is hugely popular with the American people because it's logical and it makes sense. So naturally, Democrats oppose it. Here's Hakeem Jeffries. He is the minority leader in the House of Representatives. Here's what he had to say about asking to see photo identification before you vote in an election.
In that referendum in Wisconsin, then you should have brought the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill that we strongly oppose, to the floor this week. You could have done it. Could have done it today. You could do it tomorrow. We dare you to bring the SAVE Act to the floor. We'll have that discussion. That's voter suppression.
Now, let me tell you what the SAVE Act is. Not only is it photo ID, but it's very specific. It's photo ID to ensure that when registering to vote, you are a citizen of the United States of America. So this goes well beyond just showing up at the ballot box and saying, hi, I'm registered to vote. Here's my name, and here's photo ID to prove I am who I say I am. No. This goes a step before that. This is when you go to register to vote, which is something only a U.S. citizen should do, that you have to show proof of citizenship. You have to show proof of citizenship to register to vote, which, by the way, should already be the law of the land. Somebody smarter than me has to explain to me why that's not already a law, that you have to prove you're a citizen to vote and to register to vote. But forget it. All right, we're fixing it. We've got a law. We're calling it the SAVE Act. From this point forward, if you register to vote, you have to prove you're a citizen. And not only do Democrats, led by Hakeem Jeffries, oppose it, but they call that voter suppression.
In that referendum in Wisconsin, then you should have brought the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill.
Proving that you're an American citizen and eligible to legally vote in America is voter suppression, which, by the way, is quite a tell, because he's right. It is voter suppression. It is illegal voter suppression. There is no better way to make sure that people who are voting illegally are suppressed than making them prove that they're citizens and shouldn't be voting legally. And so there's Hakeem Jeffries, leader of the Democrats, kind of giving away the store there. You're suppressing our voters, non-citizens. You're suppressing our voters, people who shouldn't be voting. So not only is photo ID racist and voter suppression and, against the Constitution in their minds, but even proving that you're a citizen is voter suppression. Thank you for admitting it, Hakeem Jeffries, by the way. Thank you for admitting that you're counting on those votes, that you rely on those votes. We're screwed if non-citizens can't vote. Absolutely destroyed. Why are you suppressing Democrat votes? We need those non-citizens. Elie Mystal, who, he is, talk about a treasure trove of content for us this week. I want him to have a new book every month with this book tour. He showed up on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God And he doubled down.
going to eliminate every single voter registration law. All of them in every state are bad. That's different from voter eligibility. If you're eligible to vote, you should just be able to rock up to the polls and vote. So we could just get rid of all. We could just get rid of all of them.
All right, now let's pause there because people who aren't thinking this through may think like that's right. Why do we register to vote? We don't need registration votes. Just if you're eligible to vote, just show up and vote. And I have no doubt that not only the audience for the Breakfast Club may not be thinking hard about this because it's a morning show and they're driving and they might not register, but I guarantee you the Mensa member hosts of this show have nothing legitimate to add to this conversation. So they're letting Elie Mystal pontificate because he's a lawyer after all. And my, oh my, just look at his hair. It looks like she should be on the Quaker Oats box. So let's just think this through for a second. There is no voter registration at all in our country. Eligible to vote, you show up and vote. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but where I live, we have voter registration. And when it's my turn to vote, I go to my polling place and I walk up and I say, my name's Larry O'Connor, but you can call me Larry. And I don't say that. And then where I live, you don't have to show an ID, but I show it anyway, just to trigger them. And they ask for my address. I tell them the address. They look on the voter registration roll to see if my name is there. They see it. They hand me a ballot. And then what do? I bet they do the same thing in your district that they do in my district. They take a pen and they draw a line through my name. Why do they do that? Why do they do that? Why? Do you know why? Because let's say I show up first thing in the morning when the polls open and I get my ballot. And then 12 hours later, I show up right before the polls close and I get another ballot. Well, if my name is lined out, they're going to say, I'm sorry, you've already voted. All right, now think this through for a minute. If we don't have voter registration, how are they going to make sure I didn't vote twice? Hold on. I'm going to take it one step further. Let's say I go to my district, my precinct, and I vote. And there's no voter registration, right? And then I drive 20 miles to another precinct and I vote. And there's no voter registration. I'm just eligible to vote. So I vote. And then I drive 20 more. Well, you get the picture. Don't you think voter registration is kind of an important thing to ensure that there aren't multiple votes from one person, that there aren't ballot stuffing, that there isn't? Let me just be clear. When someone like Elie Mystal, a liberal, left-wing, socialist, Democrat activist with a law degree, presents any kind of solution with regard to voting, you should immediately reject it because it's just going to be a gateway to cheat. Every single time. Every single time. But we'll let him finish. Now, I just wanted to jump in there because God knows Charlemagne the God ain't going to challenge him. But if you don't have voter registration, there's no way to prove that somebody didn't vote twice or 10 times.
Oh, well, we can't do that because of voter fraud. First of all, and I know this is going to be hard for some listeners who spend a lot of time listening to Republican lies, voter fraud does not exist.
I loved how you broke that down in the book.
Voter fraud just doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. We shouldn't make laws based on protecting us from things that don't exist. Republicans keep saying we need voter ID.
You know what? I'll just let him finish. Voter fraud doesn't exist. How many people have we talked about who have been convicted of voter fraud just in the last year or two? Go to Heritage Foundation. They have a whole database of voter fraud convictions. And this is a crime that is barely investigated in this country. But no. Charlemagne the God, I love how you broke this down in the book. I love how you completely lied in this book. Voter fraud doesn't exist. Okay. All right.
ID is the thing that secures our election, that protects us from voter fraud. And I call their bluff. I'm like, all right, you want voter ID? Fine. Let's make a deal. Remember how this country used to actually make deals in order to move forward? Let's make a deal. I'll give you your voter ID. It's got to be national. It's got to be free. I'll give you a free national voter ID, and you give me automatic registration of every eligible voter. You give me that deal, I will give you your ID card. Who says no? And I promise you, the people who say no are the Republicans, are the ones who claim that voter ID is necessary to secure our election, because their goal is not to secure elections, because again, voter fraud doesn't exist. Their goal is to restrict people from voting.
No, our goal is to restrict illegal voters from voting. And that's why his proposal is an absolute fraud. By the way, does he have an afro pick sticking out of his hair?
I noticed that too.
Do you see it? It's sort of blending into the background, but that is in fact an afro pick sticking out of his hair. I'll just let him move so you can see it. Yeah, it's literally just okay. Yeah. So listen, if Elie Mystal came to me with an offer like that, again, I would reject it out of hand, even if I didn't have a good reason for it, because I don't trust him. And I don't trust Democrats, and I don't trust the left on things like this. His opposition to photo ID for voting is a remarkable admission that he wants to make sure that people can vote without actually proving they are who they say they are, which is, again, the wildest thing you will ever hear around the world. I know we got viewers in Canada and England and in the Netherlands. Can you believe that in some states in this country you don't have to show an ID for something as valuable as the vote? And you heard him say, we got to just make sure it's free because, that's unfair. The argument against photo ID verification for voting in this country has always been the same, which is it discriminates against people of color, which is honestly the most offensive thing that you'll ever hear, because the suggestion is that for some reason, people of color have less ability to figure out how to get a photo ID than people of not color, or whatever the appropriate nomenclature is. Let me just leave you with this on that, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. If people of color in this country don't have photo ID, honestly, voting is the least of my concerns. It means that they can't get a bank account. It means they can't cash a check. It means they can't get a job. You need a photo ID to get a job in this country, right? You got to fill out 99. You can't work and get a paycheck unless you have a photo ID. That's just the truth. You can't travel. You can't get on an airplane. I don't think you can't get on a train. Think of all of the things that you must show a photo ID for in this country to be a normative, functioning member of our society. Now, I see the statistics that show that there's a certain number of people who do not have a photo ID and for some reason have not been able to obtain a photo ID. Number one, I don't believe those stats, but let's just go down their path with them. Let's stipulate, okay, there's a certain percentage of people in this country who cannot or have not or will not obtain a photo ID, which means they cannot be a normal, functioning member of our society. They can't get a bank account. They can't cash a check. They can't get a job. They can't travel. They can't get an education. I have a question for my friend Elie here. I have a question for Kamala Harris. I have a question for Barack Obama. I have a question for everyone in the media on the left who uses this talking point over and over again for one reason and one reason only. They use these people who don't have a photo ID, which again, I don't believe exist. But if they do, they use these people as some sort of prop to prevent voter ID from ever happening in this country. Well, we can't do that because we got people who can't get a voter ID, who can't get a photo ID, and that's why we can't have voter ID. And that's all they use them for. They literally use these imaginary people who I don't think exist to keep voter ID from becoming the law. Elie Mystal wants to make a deal. Here's my deal for you. Unlike you, sir, if there is someone in this country who is trying to function, who is trying to exist as my fellow American, who cannot get a bank account, who cannot get a job, who cannot get an education, who cannot travel, who cannot cash a check, If there's someone like that, my fellow American, my brother, my sister, under the red, white, and blue Star-Spangled Banner, I want to help that person. Why don't you? Why do you just want to use them as a reason to keep voter ID from becoming the law? Why do you want to use that poor, sad, misfortunate individual, use them as a weapon against Republicans to call us racist, and use them to keep our voting integrity in this country? Why do you only want to use them and manipulate them for your own purposes to keep this fraudulent voting scheme alive? I actually care about that person who doesn't have a photo ID. I want them to be a fully functioning member of our society, unlike you, Elie Mystal. Unlike you, Barack Obama, and every other bleeding heart Democrat who only use them as a prop and a weapon and a chance to call Republicans racist. Call me racist. I don't care. I want that guy to get an ID. I want that grandma to get an ID. I want every single person who right now, for whatever reason, is a United States citizen but cannot get a photo ID. I want them to be able to get a bank account, get a job, cash a check, travel, and get an education. Why don't you? Let's instead, you want to work a deal? Want to make a deal? Let's make a deal. Let's work together to get these people photo IDs so that they can live the American dream. Let's get them their photo IDs, and then once they have it, they can use it to vote so that we know our elections are a little bit more secure. That's the deal that I make with you, Elie Mystal, and Democrats will say no. Why? Because they don't care about that person who doesn't have a photo ID, which, again, I don't think really exists. They want to make sure that our elections are wide open for fraud.